Welcome in, everyone, to another deep dive into some really cool material.
I'm excited for this one.
Me too. This one's going to be great.
Yeah.
It's Full Catastrophe Living by Jon Kabat-Zinn.
Oh, yeah. I've heard good things.
Yeah, this is a classic. And it's amazing how relevant this book still is. It was written 25 years ago.
Wow.
Before smartphones and constant notifications.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's kind of scary to think about how much the world's changed.
Yeah.
Just in the last 25 years.
I know.
And even back then, Kabat-Zinn was talking about the increasingly frantic pace of life.
It makes you wonder what he would say about our world today, right?
It really does.
Yeah.
We're going to dive into his insights on handling stress, finding inner peace, and even how our mindset can affect our health.
It's all connected.
But before we go too far, let's define mindfulness.
Yeah, that's a good place to start.
You're probably familiar with the word mindfulness.
I've heard it.
But Kabat-Zinn describes it as the awareness that arises by paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally.
That last part, non-judgmentally, that's key.
Yeah, it is.
It's so hard, though.
Yes, so much easier said than done right.
For sure.
But it's about observing our thoughts and feelings without getting swept away by them.
Like watching clouds drift by.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that.
So before we get into the how-to,
Okay.
let's talk about the full catastrophe,
Okay.
which is Kabat-Zinn's term for all the ups and downs of life.
The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Exactly. He actually got this phrase from the movie Zorba the Greek.
I love that movie.
Such a good movie. There's this scene where Zorba basically says, "Am I not a man? Of course I've been married, wife, house, kids." The full catastrophe.
That's great.
It really highlights that mindfulness isn't about escaping life's challenges,
Right.
but about facing them head on with awareness.
You can't hide from life.
You can't. So how do we actually cultivate this mindfulness?
Yeah, that's the big question.
Well, Kabat-Zinn talks about this simple exercise using a raisin.
A raisin.
Yeah, you heard that right? A
Yeah.
raisin.
Okay.
It sounds deceptively simple,
Okay.
but it's about slowing down and really experiencing something that we usually take for granted.
So we're being mindful of the raisin.
Exactly. You hold the raisin, you examine its texture, you smell it deeply.
Really take it all in.
Yeah, and then you slowly savor each bite.
Like you've never tasted a raisin before.
It reminds me of when my niece was a toddler. Everything was so new and fascinating to her.
I miss those days.
The book actually refers to this as beginner's mind.
So we're trying to see the world through the eyes of a child.
Right. Approaching life with that same sense of curiosity and openness, letting go of our preconceived notions.
That's powerful.
It can really shift our whole perspective.
I can see how that would be helpful.
Well, especially when we get stuck in a rut, you
Yeah.
know? We tend to see problems the same way over and over again.
And we get the same results.
Exactly. And that's where the 9-dot problem comes in.
What's that?
It's that classic puzzle where you have 9 dots arranged in a square.
Okay, I think I've seen that one.
And you have to connect all of them with 4 straight lines without lifting your pen.
Oh, yeah, I could never figure that one out.
Most people can't because they get trapped within the imaginary square formed by the dots.
That makes sense.
The solution requires literally thinking outside the box.
So mindfulness is like the key to breaking out of our mental boxes.
Exactly. It helps us become aware of those limiting patterns and assumptions that keep us from seeing new possibilities.
It's like expanding our awareness.
Which brings us to stress.
Oh, boy, don't we know it.
Right. It feels like stress is just the defining characteristic of modern life.
I think you're right.
And Kabat-Zinn delves into this drawing on the work of Hans Selye,
Okay.
who coined the term stress as we know it today.
So he's like the godfather of stress research.
Selye describes stress as a generalized physiological response to any demand.
So it's not just about external events.
Right. It's about how our bodies and minds react to them.
Like public speaking, for example.
Exactly. That might be exhilarating for one person,
Totally.
but absolutely terrifying for someone else.
Yeah, it's all about how we perceive it.
And while stress can be motivating in small doses, Selye also warned about what he called diseases of adaptation.
Diseases of adaptation.
Yeah, which is what happens when stress becomes chronic.
Our bodies can only handle so much.
Exactly. Our bodies can only handle so much before things start to break down.
So mindfulness is like preventative medicine in a way,
I like that, yeah.
helping us manage stress before it leads to bigger problems.
That's a great way to put it. It's about cultivating awareness of our stress, triggers how our bodies react, and what tools we can use to cope effectively.
It's like having a toolbox for stress.
Yeah, exactly. So what are some common ways we react to stress that actually make things worse?
Well, one is reaching for those quick fixes. You know,
Like what?
Things like alcohol or caffeine, sugary treats, or even just endlessly scrolling on our phones.
It's like we're trying to numb
So it's
ourselves.
like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound.
Exactly. It might provide temporary relief, but it's not addressing the underlying issue
And over time, those habits can lead to dependency.
and even create more problems.
Exactly.
The book also mentions this thing called experiential avoidance.
What is that?
It's essentially doing anything to escape uncomfortable thoughts and feelings.
Like running away from our problems.
Kind of binge watching TV, overworking, constantly staying busy.
All those can be forms of experiential avoidance.
Yeah, so it's about recognizing those avoidance patterns and finding healthier ways to deal with the full catastrophe.
We have to face it head on,
Kabat-Zinn talks about putting out the welcome mat even for difficult emotions.
even for the stuff we don't want to feel.
He uses the example of pain, not trying to push it away, but acknowledging it, being present with it.
Okay.
The book shares this story about a truck driver named Phil
Okay.
who suffered from chronic back pain.
Back pain.
Yeah.
That's the worst.
It is, and through mindfulness practice, he learned to shift his relationship with the pain.
That's interesting.
He would ask himself this great question, how bad is it right now?
So focusing on the present moment.
Rather than getting lost in fears about the future.
That's a good strategy.
It helps us untangle the actual sensation from all the mental drama we create around it.
It's like separating fact from fiction.
Exactly. This
Yeah.
is all making so much sense, but I'm wondering about the social side of things.
Yeah. How does this affect our relationships?
Right. Can mindfulness actually improve our relationships with others?
Absolutely. The book highlights research linking social connection to both physical and mental health.
So we need those connections to thrive.
We do. Feeling truly seen, heard, and understood is crucial for well-being.
And mindfulness helps us cultivate those deeper connections.
Exactly. If we're constantly distracted or caught up in our own heads, it's hard to be truly present with others.
That's so true.
Mindfulness helps us tune in, listen deeply, and respond with more empathy and understanding.
So it's not just about inner peace. It's about bringing that same sense of presence and awareness to our interactions.
Right. It can make a huge difference in how we communicate.
Especially when it comes to navigating difficult conversations or setting boundaries.
Those can be tough.
They can be, which reminds me of what the book says about assertive communication.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about that.
So Kabat-Zinn emphasizes that so much stress arises from not communicating our needs and boundaries effectively.
It's like we're afraid to speak up.
We might stay silent when we're upset, agree to things we don't want to do, or express our emotions in unhealthy ways.
Which, of course, leads to more stress.
Exactly. Resentment, misunderstandings, the whole 9 yards.
But speaking up can be so challenging.
It definitely takes practice and courage.
But mindfulness can help with that.
It can. It's about becoming aware of our emotions as they arise without judgment.
So instead of reacting impulsively,
We create space to choose how we want to respond.
that makes a lot of sense.
It's about finding that balance between suppressing our emotions and letting them explode.
It's like walking a tightrope.
This is all making so much sense.
Yeah.
But the book also talks about something called role stress.
Role stress.
Yeah, which I haven't really heard of before.
Tell me about it.
It's about how we can become overly identified with our roles in life.
Like parent, employee, partner, all that.
Exactly. And those roles can start to define us and create a lot of pressure.
I can definitely relate to that.
Sometimes it feels like I'm just going through the motions, fulfilling these roles without really connecting to who I am beneath them.
It's like we lose ourselves in our roles.
The book shares this great anecdote about a rabbi named Abe
Okay.
who was struggling with these pushing exercises in the mindfulness class.
Pushing exercises.
Yeah, he was incredibly rigid, unable to bend.
Huh. That's interesting.
It turned out that his physical tension was actually a manifestation of emotional tension.
Wow.
He was afraid of getting hurt in relationships, so he held himself back physically as a way of protecting himself emotionally.
Our minds and bodies are so interconnected.
They really are. And once Abe became aware of that connection, he was able to start working with it in a more mindful way.
So mindfulness helped him break free from that pattern.
Right. It's about recognizing that we are more than just our job titles or our family responsibilities.
We're complex human beings.
We are with needs and desires that extend beyond those roles.
This has been an insightful exploration of mindfulness so far.
It really has. We've covered everything from the basics to its application in dealing with stress pain relationships.
It's amazing how far-reaching these ideas are.
And we haven't even touched on diet and lifestyle yet.
Oh, there's more.
Full catastrophe living also delves into the importance of nourishing our bodies and taking care of our planet.
Wow. We'll have to save that for next time.
We will, because there's a lot to unpack there.
I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. This is just the beginning of our deep dive into full catastrophe living.
I can't wait to see where it takes us.
We'll be right back to continue our exploration, so stay tuned.
Sounds good.
Welcome back to our deep dive into full catastrophe living.
Glad to be back.
Before the break, we were talking about how the book connects mindfulness to our diet and lifestyle choices.
It's all connected.
And it's fascinating how Kabat-Zinn was already writing about planetary health 25 years ago.
Yeah, that's ahead of its time.
He saw this link between personal well-being
Yeah.
and the health of our planet.
It's like a big web.
It makes you realize that mindfulness isn't just about individual peace of mind.
Right.
It has these larger implications for the world around us.
We're all part of something bigger.
So let's talk about food.
Okay.
What are some of the insights from the book about diet and nutrition?
Well, Kabat-Zinn acknowledges that healthy eating can be a challenge in our modern world.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
We're constantly bombarded with ads for processed foods, sugary drinks.
It's hard to resist sometimes.
It is, and it's easy to fall into unhealthy patterns.
And it feels like the advice is always changing.
Right.
Like what's healthy one day is suddenly bad for you the next.
It can be confusing.
It really can. So how do we navigate all that?
Well, that's where mindfulness comes in.
Okay, how so?
It's not about following some rigid diet plan. you
Yeah,
know. It's more about developing awareness around our eating habits.
so it's not so much about what we eat, but how we eat.
Exactly. It's about paying attention to our hunger cues.
Like, are we really hungry?
Yeah. Are we eating because we're stressed or bored or emotional?
You know, now that you mention it, I realize I do a lot of stress eating.
I think a lot of people do.
It's like my go-to coping mechanism.
It's a common pattern, and mindfulness can help us become aware of it.
So we can make different choices.
Right. And it also encourages us to slow down and savor our food.
Really appreciate the flavors and textures.
Like that raisin exercise we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
By paying close attention to each bite, we can turn even a simple raisin into a mindful experience.
And imagine applying that to every meal.
It could revolutionize our relationship with food.
The book also mentions that heart disease is less prevalent in countries where people eat less meat and more fish and rice.
It's interesting how diet and heart health are so interconnected.
There are so many factors involved,
But it raises important questions about the typical Western diet.
which is often high in processed foods, meat and sugar.
And let's not forget about the environmental impact of our food choices.
Right, that's a whole other layer.
Intensive animal agriculture contributes to greenhouse gas emissions deforestation.
It can feel overwhelming, to be honest.
I know.
Where do we even begin to make a difference?
Well, it starts with awareness.
Okay.
Kabat-Zinn emphasizes small, sustainable changes.
Like what?
Maybe incorporating more plant-based meals into your week,
Oh.
or simply paying more attention to where your food comes from.
Like choosing local produce or organic options
Exactly. Every choice we make, even something as simple as what we have for dinner.
has an impact.
Mindfulness empowers us to make those choices consciously in alignment with our values.
So we've talked about mindfulness in relation to stress our relationships and even what we eat.
It touches so many aspects of our lives.
What are some of the key takeaways from full catastrophe living as a whole?
Well, one of the most important things to remember is that mindfulness is a practice.
It's not a destination.
Exactly.
Ah.
It's not something we achieve overnight, but something we cultivate over time.
It's like going to the gym for our minds.
I love that analogy.
We need to exercise that awareness muscle regularly.
Even a few minutes of mindful breathing or meditation each day can make a big difference.
And Kabat-Zinn offers so many guided meditations and practices in the book.
He does. His voice is so calm.
It's like having a personal mindfulness coach right there with you.
And for those who prefer a more active approach, there are mindful movement practices like yoga and tai chi.
Which bring awareness to the body.
It's all about finding what works for you.
It's funny, we often think of mindfulness as this serious practice.
Yeah.
But the book also emphasizes the importance of humor.
Oh, absolutely. Laughter is such a powerful antidote to stress.
It really is. It lightens our mood, shifts our perspective.
Reminds us not to take ourselves too seriously.
And let's not forget about self-compassion.
That's crucial.
We're all human. We all make mistakes.
Mindfulness helps us treat ourselves with kindness, especially when we're struggling.
That can be hard sometimes.
It is. It's so easy to get caught up in self-criticism.
Especially in our achievement-oriented culture.
But beating ourselves up only adds to our suffering.
So mindfulness is about accepting ourselves as we are, imperfections and all.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that we are not alone in our struggles.
Kabat-Zinn talks about the power of connection.
Hmm.
Connection to ourselves, to others, and to something larger than ourselves.
It's about realizing we're all in this together.
And the book also mentions how social involvement is linked to greater health and longevity.
It's true.
It makes you realize that our well-being is not just an individual pursuit.
It's about community fostering those authentic connections that nourish our souls.
So mindfulness helps us build stronger relationships, cope with stress, and make healthier
It's
choices.
pretty amazing how much ground it covers.
And remember, it all starts with that simple act of paying attention.
Bringing awareness to our breath, our body, our thoughts, the world around us.
Before we wrap up this deep dive,
Okay.
we'll be back after a short break
Okay.
to leave you with some final thoughts and inspiration for your own mindfulness journey. We're back and ready to wrap up our deep dive.
I'm feeling so much more mindful already.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's amazing how exploring all these facets of mindfulness,
Yeah.
from stress management to mindful eating,
Mm-hmm.
I'm struck by how simple it really is at its core.
It is kind of a paradox, isn't it?
It is.
Mindfulness helps us with these complex challenges.
Yeah.
But the practices themselves are so straightforward.
True.
Paying attention to our breath,
Right.
being present in this moment, offering ourselves kindness.
It's like creating this quiet space
Yeah.
amidst all the noise and busyness of life.
A space where we can just be.
And that space,
Yeah.
as Kabat-Zinn says, it's not empty.
No, it's not.
It's actually full of potential.
And possibilities.
Possibilities, that's a great word for it.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, what are some things our listeners can take away from full catastrophe living
Okay.
and start applying in their lives today?
Well, the book really stresses the importance of regular practice.
Yeah.
Mindfulness isn't a one-time fix.
It's not a quick fix,
It's a way of life.
a way of being.
Exactly. We cultivate it through consistent effort.
It's like going to the gym for our minds.
I love that analogy.
Right.
We need to train our minds just like we train our bodies.
Regularly.
Yes, consistency is key.
So even a few minutes each day
It can make a big difference.
of mindful breathing or meditation.
And the book offers so many guided meditations and exercises.
It does. It's like a toolbox
Yeah.
for the mind.
And Kabat-Zinn's guidance is so clear
It is.
and soothing.
It's like having a personal mindfulness coach.
Right there with you.
And for those who don't like sitting meditation,
Yeah,
there's always mindful movement.
absolutely.
Yoga,
Tai Chi.
walking, even just walking, can become mindful practices.
It's about bringing awareness to our bodies.
And moving with intention.
We talked earlier about those unhelpful habits.
Yeah, like stress eating.
Checking our phones all the time.
How can mindfulness help us break those patterns?
Well, awareness is the first step.
Okay.
Mindfulness helps us notice those habits.
See them for what they are?
Those temporary escapes.
Yeah.
That don't really solve anything.
It's about creating space between the impulse
And the action.
so we can make a conscious choice.
Right. Instead of reaching for that bag of chips when you're stressed,
Take a few breaths.
go for a walk.
Call a friend.
It's about finding healthier ways to cope.
And that sense of empowerment.
Yeah.
That's something that really stood out to me in the book.
It's not about being perfect.
Right?
It's about showing up for ourselves
And for life.
with more awareness and compassion.
And that compassion extends outward too,
Yes, to others.
to the world around us.
Kabat-Zinn reminds us that our well-being,
Is connected to the well-being of the planet.
we're all interconnected.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what's one final question we can leave our listeners with?
What area of your life could benefit from bringing in more mindfulness today?
It's a great question to ponder
To reflect on.
and see where a little more presence, awareness, and kindness might make a difference.
Full catastrophe living is such an inspiring guide
It is.
for anyone looking to navigate life's challenges with more grace and resilience,
We encourage you to explore the book.
and discover the transformative power of mindfulness for yourself.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive
It's been a pleasure.
into full catastrophe living.
May you find peace and well-being in each and every moment